Ja, da kan vi igjen ønske velkommen til en ny runde med filmtalks her fra filmfestivalen i Tromsø 2015, enda en årgang og masse nye filmer. Mitt navn er Karsten Meinik, jeg er redaktør for nettmagasinet Montage. Og jeg sitter her på mandag, første festivaldag, med en veldig spesiell gjest. Vi skal snakke sammen på engelsk. Welcome to Tromsø.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Your name is Mahmoud Kaabour, and you're the filmmaker behind a documentary in the program called Champ of the Camp. Welcome to the north.
Thank you. It's I had to borrow a lot of clothes to be here.
Is it as extreme as the heat in the Emirates?
In a way, and I think that was a very exciting opportunity for us. We really wanted to see how the film will play in a geography where at least the climate is so harshly different. Our film is shot in temperatures that went up to 51 degrees on certain days.
And very close to here, it's actually 40 minus degrees today, so it's like 90 degrees difference. But still, I feel what's interesting about differences is that we almost always can find out all the similarities. And your film reminded me of so many essential human values and emotions that is very easy to attach yourself to as a viewer. To the audience here in Tromsø and in Kulturhuset today, could you tell us the story of your documentary, just essentially what it's about?
Our film is called Champ of the Camp. It's about a Bollywood singing competition that takes place inside the labor camps of the United Arab Emirates. Now, for those who are not familiar with that phenomenon, the entire Arabian Gulf region was built using cheap labor that come in from subcontinental Asia. So men fly in from Pakistan, India, and Nepal. They build these huge towers and the huge economies of that part of the world. And meanwhile, they do not get to live within the cities that they're building. They live in constructed accommodations that are usually around the city itself. And these accommodations have been contested by human rights groups for the longest time. Living conditions in them have been a major issue. And as a result, the press and documentary filmmakers like us have been banned from entering those areas by law for the longest time. So with this film, we actually had this unique opportunity to approach the question of the labor camps by simply looking at a singing competition. And that's how we pitched the film. We said, why don't you let us go in? This is a good story about singing, about happiness, and it's a way to show the camps differently. But inadvertently, we show every aspect of living in there, and the film ends up developing into being a study on what life in the labor camps is really like.
I find that very interesting, this aspect that cinema often can find its own ways to, especially if it has hindrances. Like, for example, a big genre film that has to apply to an audience. If the filmmaker wants to transport some interesting ideas and themes, they can do it subversively underneath the genre. And here, it's kind of interesting. The film feels like a musical documentary in a way. So the musical genre is on display both in sequences where you have sort of music video-like aesthetics, but also in the fact that music drives the story. But I totally agree with you that the film gives a portrait of laborers as they are, or sort of like in real life.
Sure. And on top of that, like you said, the film definitely has a musical aspect to it. These men come from a part of the world where Bollywood cinema is the most popular thing. So they're used to watching these films and knowing the songs by heart. And naturally, within the singing competition itself, they often choose to sing songs that express their own emotions, missing their children, missing their families back home, songs about detachment. It's almost like folk music from the US. And that bit by bit made the documentary turn into a musical, where every time we cover a scene with a character and we prod him to sing, he will pick a song that is expressing what he's going through that moment. And they would often sing it a cappella, without any band behind them, without any musical accompaniment, just the landscape that they're in, this harshness of rooms where men sleep 8 in one room, or kitchens where they cook next to up to 100 other people without air conditioning. in the summers of the
That's
United Arab Emirates.
pretty well expressed in that scene where it's like rivers of sweat on the faces while they're cutting onion and chili and
Yeah.
also juxtaposing these men against the backdrop of the buildings they've built. That was pretty great opening, I think, to the film, where you have all these men singing and also almost as the buildings themselves are the echo of the pain. It's like,
Right.
my pain is here, I'm singing it, and here's the result of my labor, sort of. But I can see in the film that the men that you meet feel that they are being seen. Like you point the camera towards them and it's as if this is their chance to get visible. Not maybe the competition so much, but actually your camera. How was your interaction with these men and how did you find the main characters in the film?
Well, naturally, I had to follow the singers of the competition itself. So whenever someone was doing really well in any round of competition, we had to follow them on the side, talk to them about their lives, and see if they could potentially be characters for the movie. So at the beginning, we followed up to 21 men, and by the end of the film, it came down to 5. And to our luck, those 5 kept going up. This is a competition that happens across a country. However, there were many moments with these men where we also felt that there is a certain reflection of the city that they carry that we need to bring out. So they wanted to be in the film, they wanted to sing. They felt it's their 15 minutes of fame.
Exactly,
and in their mind, they thought they're going to be Bollywood stars. But to us, the people who worked on the film, we are residents of Dubai and the United Arab Emirates for many years. And many of us often wondered why these men do not get seen in the city at large. Because in Dubai, when these men finish building a construction site, they get shuttled back on a bus to the labor camp. They do not go to the same...
Not going to the market or
to
the cinemas
shopping mall or they don't take the subway with us. You know, they're not part of the social fabric. And to us, we always felt that they deserve a certain credit for what they are building, and they are building everything. So we came up with that idea that you mentioned just a bit earlier of how to juxtapose them in frames within what they build. They sing to the tower, but then they vanish themselves, which is the story.
I find that also very interesting. I just have to tell you, I don't know if you've seen it, but 6-7 years ago, I saw a documentary called Muezzin, which was about a sort of idol-like singing competition among the imams in Istanbul singing the call to prayer.
Wonderful.
And I always, when I'm visiting Muslim countries, I think this is like a song to me because I don't relate to it culturally so much. I think it's kind of beautiful. They should have who's the best singer. And then there was an actual documentary about a singing competition for imams. And they're also singing from the buildings and out. And I just thought of that film when I saw the opening of your film. Also, I think it's interesting that this group of people, if it's, for example, coming from or sitting in Tromsø, Norway, you would say that, for example, the imams of Istanbul or the workers in Dubai, it's a group of people that we know, but we can't really know them.
Right.
But in both these films, and especially here in your film, music brings us so much closer. How did they feel about music in general, not only in this competition, but in your conversations with these men?
Well, they love music, that's for sure. A laborer in the United Arab Emirates, due to his very humble means, these men make sometimes $300 a month only, US dollars. Due to their humble means, they entertain themselves by watching Bollywood cinema on pirated DVDs, on their own personal computers, and like many Indians, they end up knowing all the songs by heart. They know all the words, and they sing to themselves. They sing to themselves quite a bit. Music, on the other hand, was to us this wonderful excuse that allowed us to keep lobbying the authorities to allow us to make this film, because we always argued that it's only music. And it is truly a film about music, but it's about music that is loaded with messaging and about backgrounds behind the music that tell us quite a lot about parts of that society that definitely could benefit from improvement and more equality. Yeah. There couldn't have been a way to say it all directly. And you started out by talking how sometimes filmmakers hit a wall when they just want to tackle the theme and talk about it immediately in blunt words. We took a curveball here. We went left field. And I love to think that we carried something across, and we hopefully blew the lid on that world. And hopefully if someone after us wants to dig deeper, they probably will have a better chance, and I just hope they will keep going.
Yeah, I'm sure also audience members here in Tromsø will be curious about that, because of course we are very used to, if a documentary wants to look at a part of society that is at once sociologically interesting, but also worthy of critique, and you have to sort of be journalistic about it. This film is not going that way, but it's very understandable that to get their story out, it's better to tell the story than not telling a story at all. But tell us a little bit about this process of getting the clearances. How is it totally Kafkaesque, or?
It was close to impossible. Luckily, our film producer here was in charge of lobbying and lobbying and lobbying until she got the permits 3 years later. But I'll tell you why that is. Over the course of the development of the Gulf, many journalists from across the world have been interested in the conditions of labor camps. They went in, they did very shallow stories where they film maybe half an hour worth of footage, and then they lay their own voiceover on top saying, you know, messages of doom, and, you know, laying comparisons to lives of their own. And that I always thought was a bit superficial. In the UAE, there was a reaction to that by blocking everyone from going into the camps unless they have permits from many, many different offices within the government. And we wanted to do something that is a little bit deeper, and we thought that we cannot, this rhetoric, this narrative about labor camps cannot continue to be told on behalf of the laborer. Why not let the laborer tell their own story? If they're suffering and their life is so different from mine and yours, let's listen to that comparison told by them for a change, and let's hear why they still accept to go through it. Because the truth is, millions of men still come from subcontinental Asia. They still accept to live in countries like the UAE and Kuwait and Saudi and Qatar. Many of them go through very difficult lives. Many of them have living conditions that are at times subhuman. But why not listen to what else they have to say? There were very small moments in our film that, to me, are quite telling about the cultures that these men come from. You know, the guy who won the competition, on his way home, if you remember, the first thing he bought to take home with him was a flashlight, because he said that in his village they have electricity problems.
Yeah.
You know, which is better, no electricity or a room with 8 men. You start asking yourself questions like this. Yeah. And I didn't want to judge or pass any answers, but I thought it's interesting for once just to furnish as much information as possible. Yeah. And let the audience pick and build an impression of their own. Yeah.
No, I think actually you managed this feeling when you watch the film, that at least I feel that you, as a sort of filmmaker, are keeping some sort of rhetorical distance, and that gives us that opportunity to at least look for ourselves. And some scenes are incredibly close and humanistic, and others portraying the competition feels partly like a strange sort of satire of reality television that we are very familiar with, but in other genres. So the actual competition itself, I had some reactions myself to it. Like, why didn't they judge the actual singing? It was about this button and getting the right answer. It was like a fact questions. I was thinking the guy with the most beautiful voice, he didn't even get to sort of present it.
Right. No,
did you feel frustrated about that?
Totally. I mean, the competition itself, I would not say it's a well-produced event. It's something that was invented by a company that remits money from the UAE,
Western Union,
around the world. Yeah. And the event was created, obviously, to create some sort of brand loyalty with the hundreds of thousands of laborers that take place in the competition, because they are obviously the best client they have.
Strangely enough, they are also a market.
Exactly.
For a specific kind of service. And the money transfer service is very symbolically, obviously, one of the most important in their lives.
Right. So with that in mind, the event is not designed to be a spectacular television standard singing competition. It's modeled on something called Antakshari, which is a television format in India. They assumed that the laborers would know it from having seen television in their countries. And they just copied it low production value in order to generate more business. And that aspect of the story was also quite interesting and alarming to us, because as filmmakers who struggled for years to enter the labor camps, we were very surprised to enter there and discover that the corporations were in before us, and they were in selling product, basically.
I was going to ask that. How could you then sort of balance your responsibility as a filmmaker when obviously the corporate machinery was that much in place? Like, it seemed.
Well, it was in place, and it's an outcome of that economy. The economy of the Gulf is a free market. You know, it's all about selling and buying and self-imposed rules. However, we really thought that we need to explain, at least in a little section in the film, that this is all being done in a way where the laborers are going to become a potential client of this company. And it's being done so closely and so intimately on people who live in fenced areas. So in a way, they are a captive audience of this event. And even if they like it or like it very much, they're going to just use Western Union as opposed to another. This is but one of many of the economic aspects of the story as well, which we felt are quite important. And
I mean, I read some sort of subversive Truman Show-esque sort of corporate critique into this, but it must have been in any way difficult for you. I just can't imagine, because you have the authorities here, and then you'll have the corporations here, and all you want is the story of the people.
Yeah, we were treading with the lightness of the videographer who is trying to cover the wedding. Yeah. You know, you don't want to step on the dress. You don't want to come in the way of anyone watching. And you're just saying, I'm doing a wedding video. And that's exactly what we tried to do. What has happened since is still playing out. We really hope that the findings of the film will be of inspiration to people around us in that society as well. Because life in the camps has become a subject of myth. Many people have just imagined it for so many years that they don't know what it really is. And to finally see it has probably gauged the imagination of people and hopefully inspired directions in which, in the United Arab Emirates at least, where life in the labor camps, I need to say honestly, is so much better than many other parts of the Gulf. We still hope that it's going to improve a little bit more, and some aspects are going to be taken into consideration.
It'll be interesting to follow. Champ of the Camp is the third feature documentary that you've made. The first film you made was Being Osama in 2004. Correct. And your second film was here in Tromsø, actually, screening here, Grandma 1,000 Times. That time you couldn't be here.
Sadly.
But this time you're here to present it. And I'm sure the audience will start feeling a connection with you and your films. What's next? What kind of projects might be coming our way in the future?
My films keep evolving into films that just are so different from one another on both aesthetic and content levels. The only thread I continue to find between the films is the music itself. In Grandma 1,000 Times, I had found music by my late grandfather and gone back to Lebanon to play the music to my grandma, and we ended up documenting his life by me playing my grandfather and she telling the story, and it was a playful little film. Suddenly, we're in labor camps in the United Arab Emirates.
Pretty different.
Film in the Hindi language, featuring Bollywood songs. My next film, I think, will be heads-on music a little bit more. I am really excited to be exploring a film with a very important opera music personality. And I hope to dig deep within the persona of opera singers and see what their life is.
Sounds
like.
Very interesting. I'm sure people are going to be very curious here.
Yeah.
You're attending the festival this year also with your cinematographer, Ben Pritchard, is here, and your producer, Eva Sear. I hope you're going to be enjoying Tromsø very much, and you get to talk with people here about your film and about other films, hopefully.
We sure will be.
Thank you very much for coming here to Film Talks.
Thanks
Look
for
forward
having us.
to our next film.
Thank you.
Og vi møtes igjen til en ny samtale i morgen.